Now, today I had some limited amount of time, so Karen told me to be back relatively early. And I thought what I'd do, I haven't done it in a while, is go back to the area where I spent my teenage years, basically Richfield Park and Little Ferry, New Jersey, and see how that area has evolved. Now, one of the things that's happened every time I go back there, something radical has changed. And I don't recognize it, and I think, oh, gee, I wish I had taken a picture of that. Well, today I had some more surprises in store for me. This was a very nostalgic day. Well, it looks like today is going to be just one more nice day out on the open road, and we want to take advantage of every one of these. We're at the end of the summer. We'll be coming up on fall very soon when the leaves will be changing. But right now, the days are hot, the days are long, there's still flowers out. It's still wonderful just to be out on the open road. That is did have all the indication that we were going to get cooked by the end of the day. So, and because we had limited time, where this area that I grew up in is only less than 5-6 miles from the house. But on the other hand, I hadn't been there in a while, maybe a year, to see some of these sites. And it's always nostalgic when I look at how quickly things change. All of a sudden you ride through and that building wasn't there before, or this wasn't there. And how they've modernized the railroad yard. Wow, when I was a kid, you could just go back there and climb up on a boxcar, and yeah, there was just all kind of fun things going on, and the railroad guys would wave to you and everything. Now there's nothing but signs up, no trespassing. And Teterboro Airport, where I used to keep the air coop there wasn't even a fence. You could just pull the car up, take pictures if there was other people working on their planes. It was so nostalgic. It was so much fun to be a young guy around aviation and around the railroad. And the fish, the reason I'm interested in fish, when I was young, I used to go fishing. And I'd catch these little baby sunfish and stuff, and I never realized what it did. It started a lifelong interest in fish for me, and it stayed with me my whole life now. I wonder where some of these little things start. Well, you never know where they start, but in the end, you find out some of these things stay with you and you have an interest in them for your whole life. And I wonder how that's going to be for my grandson, if he's going to be interested in these type of things. And one thing's for sure, everybody has a unique set of passions. And of course, in the modern world, they don't want you doing anything, going anywhere. Same thing at the airport, there's signs everywhere. When I was a kid, they didn't care if you jumped on a train and took a ride. Unbelievable how the world has changed. And one of the things as a teenage kid, we used to climb up on these trestles where the signal lights are. We used to do that all the time. We knew how to get by the little gate that they had. And it was really funny. The engineers would blow the whistle. They didn't care. And when you grow up really poor, you find things to entertain yourself that maybe wealthier kids didn't have to do, like climbing those trestles in the railroad yard. That was really a great memory. Now, it was 60 years ago today. 60 years ago, I was a teenager, and right across the river, where you see that building there was a seaplane base and a restaurant called Tracy's 9 Mile House. And that's where I got my first interest in aviation, riding around in seaplanes. You could get a ride for a couple of dollars. Now it's gone. And this, just coming down here, this used to be all cattails. It's a big industrial area now. And I come down here every once in a while and I just reminisce about how it was when I was a teenager. I always think too, the life of a teenager nowadays, as opposed to the teenagers we were, boy, we were always looking to get in trouble. We were always looking some little mischievous thing you could do. By the high school, when people wouldn't lock their car and we'd get out of school early, of course, sometime we didn't get out of school at all. We'd take the front seat out of their car and just put it, on the side of the road. That was fun.
Now, as a teenager, what we would do is come down here at lunchtime. This is the rail yard in Richfield Park. We'd come down here with some Scotch tape and pennies and tape the pennies to the track and watch the trains run over them. This was a very busy train line at the time. It was a passenger route with bud cars. Now it's a freight line only. And we would come down here and make these pennies that were 4 or 5 inches long, run back to school and show everybody. The girls were very impressed.
So the funny thing too, if you were a macho kid, you had to smoke cigarettes. I think I was the only one in my graduating class that didn't smoke cigarettes. And I always used to tell them I'm a leader, not a follower. Now, I don't know how that played out later in life, but I know it didn't play out well for some of my friends. Anyway, that aside, and what was funny too, not one kid had a tattoo. The only people who had tattoos were people who were serving time on Rikers Island or in the Navy.
And this is where I developed my interest in railroading and model railroading, and I still have a giant model railroad in the attic of my house. But this was such fun as kids coming down here. The engineers would always blow the whistle for you, and those pennies were so much fun.
Now, life was as different back then as an RD is from an MT09. And you think, what do kids do now that they don't climb railroad trestles? They're not interested in trains. That's perfectly okay. But they hack banks and they send you spam or whatever they do. Or they turn into geeks where all they do is sit at a console 24 hours a day. What a different childhood I had, and I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Now, back in the 60s, all these factories were factories. And you could get jobs right out of high school that paid pretty good. I was always happy to have that kind of work too, because I didn't want to go to college right away. And I wanted to go drag racing cars, and it allowed me to get some money. All of these places, now it's a whole different thing. They're all offices, and they've converted them. I don't even know if these smokestacks now are antennas. And all the railroad cars that go here are all rusty. That's a sign of the time.
And of course, for everybody, looking back at your childhood or your teenage years or your young adult years or whatever, and for everybody, it's a different thing, a different experience, a different thing that they're happy about or they're unhappy about. Now, being poor, I had to find things that were very entertaining and creative that you didn't need a lot of money for. And to be honest about some of it, I got pretty good at living a good life on very little money.
And when I was a teenager, we never knew where these tracks wound up. So we'd walk and keep walking and walking. All of a sudden there'd be a bridge, and then we'd be afraid to go across the bridge. Anyway, as an adult, once you get your license, you can find out where the tracks go.
And I remember when we all had these little dirt bikes and 125cc Suzuki I had, and we would ride along the edge of the railroad track because we never really knew where they wound up. And then you'd come to switches, and you'd come to a bridge, or you'd come to something else, and it was like exploring the universe. It was like a Huckleberry Finn thing to find out where those railroad tracks went. Was that ever an interesting thing?
And it's all modern factories now in this area. They've cleaned this whole place up. There's a big golf links here where they just hit the ball. All modern. Another iconic building, this was the passenger train station in Richfield Park. They made it something now, I don't know, an office building or something. It looks like they took nice care of it. Anyway, it's right on the railroad line. And it used to be such a cool thing here. You could come down here and watch the trains go by again. They had just come out with bud cars. And this was a passenger line. They'd go up and down pretty much all day long and on the weekend too. Very cool. As a kid, that was such a big thing.
And I remember a friend of mine that was a little bit older than us and had a really good dirt bike. He rode the railroad tracks through the backwoods somehow and got almost to the border of Pennsylvania, got off, didn't even know where he was going to run out of gas. And every time he went out, oh, you guys should come with me, you guys should. And we were so scared that we'd get lost or run out of gas or get eaten by a bear or... But Bernie was a tough guy. He always managed to make it back.
Here's the Elks Club where we had our 50th class reunion. It's still standing, still there. This is pretty funny too, and it's true. In Rutherford, the Elks Club, somebody stole the elk. One day they came out and the elk wasn't there and they never recovered it. They had to replace it. True story. Now I graduated high school from Richfield Park High School in 1963 and they tore the high school down. This is the block where it used to be. It used to be the high school for the town of Richfield Park and Little Ferry. It's now a vacant lot. And they built a brand new high school out in the swamp, but boy, if you knew how many memories I have of this high school. And we were bad kids. We were not really obedient kids.
And if you did something bad in gym, you had to take a lap around a block. Well, that always resulted in we'd be looking for a car. And I said this before, looking for a car that was unlocked, and pretty much nobody locked their car. And we'd get two of us, one on each side, take the front seat out. The front seat on older cars used to just snap right out and put it behind the hedges or something. And we thought that was funny. See, that's why we grew up to be such successful entrepreneurs in our adulthood.
This is probably the saddest part of the story. This is the post office. This used to be the late Harold Price's house. They tore it down, put up this condo. And where this condo is was his house and his shop. And he's the one that, when I was a young teenager, he taught me how to paint, how to buff out paint. And we were modelers together. He was a great guy. He shared all the knowledge he had about paint. And I learned real quick.
Now, anybody that was a modeler back in these days knows people were not prone to sharing information. There was no YouTube. A lot of people, in fact, would go out of their way to tell you the wrong thing to do, hoping that you would not be successful. And we lived and died by who had the nicest paint job on their model airplanes. And all of my friends flew model airplanes as kids. And we loved shiny paint.
There's another sad part of the story of being a child of the 60s. That bridge that goes over the railroad track between Little Ferry's on that side, Richfield Park's on this side. 7 of the kids that I went to high school with died in Vietnam. 7. And that was more than any other town as far as I remember. They dedicated that bridge to them. And they have a plaque on each end of the bridge of the 7 names, Georgie Baker and Freddie Baker. 2 of them I remember, Richard Bolts. Kids I graduated with. Wow. Every time I come down here to do a little nostalgia, I think about them. And I have gone to the Vietnam War Memorial and seen their names on the wall.
And I have been to the War Memorial several times with Karen, and to go back at night when it's lit up and they're removing the flowers of the day and see kids that you went to high school with, their name in marble, that black marble, it's eerie. It actually is very moving. It was very moving for me because every one of these 7 kids I knew, and they were all in my graduating class. I knew them all personally.
This is a very unusual drawbridge here with the cantilever, a concrete cantilever, so the whole bridge comes up whenever a boat used to go by. I don't think boats go by anymore. As a kid, what memories. Wow. And those trains used to go by, it seemed like every 10 minutes.
And when my grandson was younger, we would be virtually every night. We would go down around 5 o'clock and spend an hour down by the Rutherford train station watching the trains go by. And he was so excited that he waved to the people and he was mesmerized to see the headlight come down the tracks. I don't think younger kids really have any attraction to trains or aviation, or maybe even they're not attracted to motorcycles.
Now down at this end too is one. There's only 2 left in New Jersey of round where they a round table where they can rotate the engines around. And there's one down there. They won't let you down there, of course, thanks to there's signs posted everywhere. But it's very interesting to see them do that. There's one in Port Jervis too, which we've seen when we took the ride on a 614. Very interesting.
And one of the things I never lost interest in was fish. And I learned to fish on that lake. That's Indian Lake in Little Ferry. There used to be 2 lakes in town. I'm not sure there are still 2 lakes. This lake is beautifully maintained. It's stocked with fish. Every spring they stock it. They open up the fishing season. There were actually people fishing today. But it was such a thrill as a kid to go fishing and catch these little sunfish that were probably 4 inches long. And then you always threw them back, of course. There was no way to keep them. And it started me down a path of an interest in fish that has stayed for my whole life. Fish, trains, aviation, modeling. All those interesting things started somewhere in my teenage years. Every single one of them.
That is a true story. When I was a kid, this land where this fence is, the fence wasn't there, of course. But that land back there, my family owned. My Uncle Henry owned it right to the edge of the airport. And the fence wasn't there, this road wasn't here. But watch what happened in 60 years when you turn around, and I love just looking back. I do this all the time. What do we have right on the edge of our property now? Aviation Hall of Fame Museum, helicopters, warplanes, unlimited stuff. And it all happened in the last 60 years during my lifetime.
And I'm always amazed at how things have changed and how quickly they've changed. Like no other generation that ever lived have things changed that much, and have younger people changed from how different they are from their parents, grandparents. And I'm sure that trend is going to continue for the next generation and the generation after that. It's just ongoing.
I come down here quite a bit because both my uncle and my father have little memorials in there, little tributes to their service. And, well, it's just really near. We're about 5 miles from where I live right now, right on the edge of Teterboro Airport. When I was growing up as a kid, Teterboro Airport was Piper Cubs and DC-3s. Arthur Godfrey used to fly in here. Now it's all jets.
And in a way, the RD400s have evolved into MT09s, and in a way, 55 Chevys have evolved into whatever, Lexus or whatever, my minivan. Life goes on, whether you like it or not, whether you approve or not, and you can fight it and cry about it and do anything you want. But in the end, the tide of life just sweeps everything away, and in my lifetime, a lot has changed.
Now, 60 years ago, 50 years ago, this was a tie-down area for small light planes. You can see what it is now. It's nothing but overgrown and no trespassing signs. That's where I used to keep the air coop for the 7 years I owned it. Great memories, but they're gone forever.
But I always do think that the one thing that stays the same and the one thing that you never lose is when you have a memory of something and you can somehow document it. In my case, I didn't even own a camera until probably I was 50 years old. And I don't have pictures of my childhood. I don't have many pictures of anything. But I do have the memories. And those memories are very vivid and clear. They're not cloudy at all. And when I do see things like a Piper Cub fly over, or a DC-3, or a train go by, it brings back that memory of being young. And it's part of the reason for me, and obviously for other people too, that enjoy these older motorcycles. They do remind you of a time that was much simpler. And it was, just as an example, you would put points and plugs in your car. Now you have to bring it to the dealer for $150 an hour, hook up to the computer. And how you could do things yourself with simple things. And how you could be happy with simple things. And having these old memories, having the memories of my days, even the racing days. Racing was simple and it was inexpensive. And it all changed within my lifetime.
I'm back early. I had a very nostalgic ride. It was nice. Very nice. But it's getting hot already. Boy, oh boy. Hot, hot, hot.
So for a day we had very limited time to ride. This turned out to be a good choice, getting to see the old neighborhood. What used to be my high school is now flat land. The railroad yard where kids used to go, and everybody was interested in trains. Everybody had Lionel trains. Oh my God. I think the modern generation, they're going to get together and go look at the computer store, the games they had, or what they're going to have, or maybe someday this bike will be nostalgic. And there actually was a time, this is a true story, Ray will remember this as well as anybody. There was a time when I would wake up in the morning, I'd go out to the garage and get the RD, drive to Greenwood Lake on the RD, go out in my little boat, 18-foot boat, come back, take the RD down to the airport, go get the air coupe, fly over Greenwood Lake, wave to everybody, go back with the air coupe back to Teterboro Airport, where now it's forget it. And at the end of it, get back on the RD and go back home. And that was a typical day of my youth, my wayward youth. Now, I figure, what can I do for a couple hours? Get out and get some exercise. And how many vegetables can I eat? How things have changed in all that time. But a nostalgia day like today is always full of sad little memories, that things that you had years ago are not there anymore, or they've changed, or that they plowed out your high school and turned it into a park for kids, or the railroad yard is not as user-friendly, and certainly the airport is not friendly at all. It's almost like it's a criminal to be interested in aviation. They don't even want you taking pictures down there. The minute you take out a camera, even at the air show, the last air show we went to, they were walking around to make sure you don't take any pictures of the jets. You could take them of the warbirds, but not of the jets. Who knows? Who knows where this world is going? It's not really important. But it is important to remember the good times you've had, the good family, the good friends, and remember it all well. And thanks so much for watching. We do try to post something up every day. And join us tomorrow.